Hey, it's Aaliyah, and I am back with another conversation. Daily Conversations is all about highlighting people's stories, their why, their impact to inspire and educate you to do the same. Not just to inspire and educate you to do the same, but really to push you to know that you can do whatever you're doing, like whatever you put your mind to, right? Because there are so many people out here, and I say this a lot, that don't have the money, or they're not millionaires, they're not billionaires, but they're still making the impact. They're still fighting through the struggles, right? And the obstacles that we face to get over, to get over the hill, to still create and to build and to make change, right? And so I just want to talk to people who are doing the same thing that I am doing in my own community, whether it's big or small. So today I have a special guest, and I would love for our special guest to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, something interesting about yourself, and what you do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Zaia Tombre. I am a mother, a law student, so almost a lawyer. We like to call that an embryonic lawyer because I'll graduate in May. A former teacher and an entrepreneur.
Wow, that is a lot. You said a mother, a law student, almost a lawyer, right? Close,
Mhm.
about to graduate and become a lawyer. Used to be an educator, an entrepreneur. How do you like keep everything flowing? How do you manage all of that?
Oh my gosh, with a very supportive partner. My husband is amazing. And I like the people in my life keep me together, but I also don't watch TV, which I think helps.
Listen, that's a good tip right there. You said you do not watch TV.
I cannot.
I love that. First of all, not watching TV is kind of like less distractions, but also like I feel like it would keep your mind clear. Like, what have you noticed from not watching TV?
Oh my gosh. It's interesting because, well, I work full time in addition to doing law school at night and then being with my kids, right? And so without TV, I like TV sucks me in so much. And so I have a lot more time and like I don't miss it, honestly. Like I'll listen to like books during the drive. Um, but I think that I have like a clear way of thinking because those plot lines are not in my brain.
Wow, that is so good. I felt the same way when I stopped listening to the radio. I felt like
Mhm.
my mind or my brain was a little bit clearer. Like you said, I replace it with podcasts, or I'll create my own little playlist on Spotify. But I have like completely disconnected from the radio. But it makes me feel good. So that's good that you have found something that helps you to manage all that you do, because you do a lot. And so I would love for you to talk about your personal journey. How did you go from like being an educator to law school?
Yes. So I taught, so when I was growing up, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. Like that is the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher and then retire and open up an ice cream shop and name the ice cream flavors after my favorite students or whatever. Um, And so I majored in education and I also did Teach for America, did it in the Mississippi Delta, moved to Nashville and got my master's in public policy, went back to teaching. And so I taught math for a total of 4 years and realized that, I mean, I think I just got burnt out, like a lot of teachers do, and realized that while I love kids, I think like my purpose is really working with adults. And I think like that is sort of my vibe and where I can make the most impact. So I transitioned into this startup company called Enrich Schools, where we worked with alternative substitute teachers, and then went back to the school I used to teach at and was director of talent. So again, working with adults, bringing people into the teaching profession. That's sort of like my journey. And then at some point, Well, actually, it was after I had my daughter. I knew that I could not give her the life that I wanted in the education sector, which is really sad, right?
Mm.
Because, like, teachers deserve so much. But I just was like feeling very lost. I wasn't having the direct impact that I wanted to. And so my therapist actually suggested, why don't I think you'd be a really good lawyer. And like, I had never considered being a lawyer ever because I thought they were grimy, But what I realized is like, actually, you can really help people. Um, and so I just sort of like kept following the steps, right? Like, oh, okay, I'll look at what the LSAT is. I'll study, I'll take it, I'll apply to law school. And just like then I found myself sitting in class day one and I was like, well, I guess I'll do it.
Wow. So what are you actually going to law school for?
So I'm going to Nashville School of Law, and with a law degree, you can practice anything. But
Okay.
my hope when I get out, I really like working in family law, but I also am wanting to do education law since that's my background.
Okay. So when you and just to delve just a little bit deeper into that, because you said educational law, like do you specifically want to like empower parents and help parents? Like what do you want to specifically do?
So I think education is a really interesting subject, right? And I think, especially with our current political climate and everything that's happening with the Department of Education, we're going to see a lot of changes.
Mm.
I think parent empowerment is so important. And I also think that, like, working from the inside, oh, like, I think school districts need to know better to do better sometimes. And I think that a lot of times people think that lawyers are just like in court and fighting lawsuits and whatnot. But I think like strong advice on the front end will
Mm.
help mitigate a lot of issues on the back end.
So you mentioned, or did you mention that you were a coach?
I got trained through Messy Roots, which is a great organization. And so, yes, I have my coaching certification, and I'm also a Rule 31 mediator.
What do you do with your coaching certification? How does that play a role in your career?
So, being a coach is it was such a good training because it really helps you work with people in a way where you're learning about their values and you're sort of like trying to figure out their values, their habits, their mindsets behind what they're telling you, right? And so you're sort of getting to the root of the issue. And I think that that works hand in hand with mediation as
Mm.
well. Um, and a lot of like conflict resolution pieces is like, can't like, someone is telling you one thing, but the value that they're speaking from is is really what's coming out. And so if you can get to that value component and name it, I think that helps a lot of conversations.
So, what do you think educators and school leaders can learn from mediation practices? Like, were you working with teachers?
So that was part of my pilot. So currently I do mediation for Nashville Conflict Resolution Center. And so I work with parents who are mediating to figure out the best parenting plan for their child, their children. And it can be really hard sometimes because, as you know, in a divorce or any sort of split, like parents care so deeply about their kids. And of course, they want the most time with them. But I think what I bring to the table is focusing on that child. And obviously mediation sessions are all confidential and whatnot. But I think like sometimes parents are thinking about themselves and their schedule and, well, I'll just wake up at 5 a.m. and I'll drive them to school every day. And sometimes you have to push back and say like, well, is that good for the child? Like a growing teenager who needs as much sleep, like, yes, I know you love your son or daughter so, so much, but is that the best option for your child?
I like that. And teachers in schools can use that model as well as just thinking about what's best for the child, right? Because I think that's like a big educational topic right now. It's like, are schools really meeting the needs of children? So do you think mediation would help with that? Like, would help in at school systems?
So yes, I think anytime two people can sit down and talk to each other and have a neutral third party really help two people understand each other, it's very, very helpful. I think like when we think about it in practicality, I mean, as a former teacher, it's going to be the way that schools are now. I don't think that unless there is a dedicated staff member who is trained in it, it's there's not like the time allotted, right?
Mhm.
And so like having conversations and teaching kids how to have conversations is so important. But like so many other things gets pushed to the wayside. But to answer your question, yes, of course, it would be tremendously helpful to have it in schools.
Wow. So I read in your bio that like did you say like the champ of time management or like time management was like your superpower? And so I would love for you to give us some tips on time management. Like what can we do to better manage our time?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, I got into it a little bit, right? Like cutting out the TV, cutting out scrolling, like doom scrolling or whatnot. And I think what's interesting about that is that like the screens suck up your time and they're actually designed to do so, right? I
Right.
listened to Growth Day, which is Brendan Burchard, and he says like the smartest engineers in the world have like sat down to design these programs to release the dopamines and serotonin that you get from scrolling through these. And so I do have social media, but like I will anytime I see an ad, right? Like because like the more you scroll, the more ads you get. And so when I start to notice, oh my gosh, a lot of ads are coming up, I'm on too much. And I know that because that's how like the algorithm works. And so I just immediately turn it off, cut it out. But that's like something that you have to train yourself to do. So I would say like that, right? Like not watching TV, being careful for doom scrolling. And then I would also say like one of the things that I have serious mom guilt about is not being able to spend enough time with my kids, right? Because I work full time every single day and then I have night school from 6:30 to 10. And that is a lot because I'm not seeing my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old, and they're at a developmental age where they really still need their mom. But my therapist, who's the best in the world, of course, said, with kids, it's not really quantity, it's quality. And so when I am with my kids, I am super present, super focused, really trying to make memories with them because they don't get a lot of me. Unlike I have a lot of like complexes about that. But I think if like the more quality time I can spend with them, the better. Um, and then the last tip I'll give is like, I am not afraid to hire a good babysitter because on Sundays, and this is what I've done all throughout law school, Sundays 8 to 3, I hire a babysitter because I could not do it. And I just go to a coffee shop and do my work. And that is like how I maintain. Saturdays are family time, all day fun. Sundays 8 to 3, work.
Listen, I completely, and you're not the only one. We as moms, we definitely feel that mom guilt when we feel like maybe we're not giving our children enough time or something is taking over our time. Like that's kind of one reason why I resigned from teaching as well, is because I was literally a new mom. Like I had my daughter right after I finished, like the last day that I finished my master's program. The next day, I had my daughter.
Oh my
And then,
gosh.
like a couple of months later, I was going into teaching as like my first year. So it was a lot. That was a
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot happening in a short time span. And so, I felt that as well, And so we make choices and we do things. And like you said, quality over quantity. Because I can tell you right now, spending spending all day with your children is really not the move. Okay. I just want to be honest. Like I love being a stay-at-home mom. I love being a homeschooling mom. It's something like I realized when I was teaching that I was missing a lot of time. And like you said, she was a new, so it was kind of like those important years of her life. And I really wanted to spend the time, but I'm at a point now where she's 6 years old, and I'm just like, okay, what's next? Because she's gotten a
Yeah.
lot of me. Gotten so much of me, that I'm kind of like it feels like I'm like it's a full-time job. It really
Mhm.
is.
It
Uh,
is.
but listen, I completely understand you. I love that as well. So moms take that. If you're a working mom, if you're a stay-at-home mom, but sometimes you feel you get overwhelmed, remember quality over quantity.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I would love for us to get into how we met, your venture. So, I met Zaia through 4.0 Tiny Fellowship. We are both fellows. So that means we both received funding and coaching and teaching and community from 4.0. And so that also means that Zaia is doing something impactful in her community. And I would love for you to talk more about the work that you're doing.
Yes. So my venture is called Biracial Bridge Builders. I So I guess I didn't share my interesting fact. Even though I like if you look at me, I look completely white, but I am half Indian. So my dad was born and raised in India. And so I grew up with, my dad was around and up until like age 6 through 9 when my parents got divorced. But like during my fundamental years, I had my cousins come over from India. Like my mom taught my aunt how to drive, and like a lot of this like cultural learning.
Wow.
Um, and so essentially, Biracial Bridge Builders is a program for biracial women who want to be trained in conflict resolution skills. And so essentially, there's two parts, right?
Mhm.
Is the first part is really helping biracial women learn how to honor and celebrate and view being biracial as a really unique advantage. Because what I've learned through my pilot is that a lot of times there's this sense of otherness, right? Where it's like there's one side that you might identify with more, but then you really can't fit into the other side, but you still like feel like you're part of it, depending, right? So like I look white, so I was socialized as being white, but like I would love to like live into my Indian side more.
Mm.
And so I think like as what we did in the pilot is we had biracial women share their stories, and that theme kept coming, right? Like sometimes, like we had a couple of folks who were very able to live into both sides of their identity, which is amazing, right? Like that's what we want. But like a lot of us, myself included, are not quite to the point where it's like, I would love to wear my kurta to work, right? But I don't yet feel I'm able to.
Mm.
So anyway, that's like the first piece, where we would try to like work on living into both sides of our identity. And the second piece is working on conflict resolution. And so originally I thought uh, I would get everyone trained in mediation. But what I realized is that's actually not quite it. And through this 4.0 venture, I think we're going to go with nonviolent communication. And so the reason or like the reason and rationale behind that is that with mediation, it's like to do a great mediation, both parties walk away and they sort of feel like, okay, I didn't win, but I came to an outcome that I can live with, right? With nonviolent communication, it's really about seeing the other side, making sure that the other side feels heard. And as biracial people, I think we have grown up in a way where you can sort of see both cultures. And of course, that's not limited to only biracial people, obviously, right? But I do think that it is a skill set that we have, and I think like biracial bridge builders is a way to honor and like grow that in the participants.
So, what kind of like change are you hoping to create, or would you like to see with biracial bridge builders?
So, like long-term vision, right, is that we would have like the program would like train up biracial people and they would be able to go into workplaces and help ease some of the racial tensions. That would be like the long-term vision. Um, I think that's a lot, like a long, lofty goal, but I think that it's important. I think the issue there is that a lot of times people don't realize that their issues have some underlying racial tones, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Where did the need to start biracial? And I keep getting it because it's BBB. I keep getting it mixed up. Why did you feel like this was an important thing to start, or what gap are you trying to fill?
I think, I mean, the idea came to me a couple of years ago, walking in nature. I was going through a hard time, realizing like I care so deeply about racial justice, and I don't feel like I can have a voice necessarily because I don't present as a person of color. I think that this idea came when this was like after the pandemic, but there was a lot of like DEI work going on, and we see the backlash now, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, but I think that I wondered, like, gosh, like, are there other people like me who could have an impact? And actually, really where this came from is this fact that, okay, because I present as white, I know people say things to me that they would never say to like if there was a person of color who
Mhm.
presented that way in the room. And so essentially, like what I want to do is like use my white privilege for good. Is like I don't have like the daily exhaustion from systemic racism that a lot of people of color experience on the daily because of my skin color. And so I would much rather be able to like be empowered and make sure that I am having those singular conversations with people to like change minds, right? Like, how do you really have that conversation to change their mind and say, you just said something very interesting. Where is that coming from? Let's think of a different, like, counter narrative to that.
How does and that gives you a very diverse perspective. So how does your identity shape the way that you approach your work?
In a variety of ways, right? Like, I, I mentioned this at the beginning. My dad left, and then just like, it was a whole thing. But the divorce happened. And so I never got to experience like his culture or like
Mhm.
my culture. And so it wasn't until college that I even realized that I was mixed. And so then I went on this like deep dive exploration of like, what does it mean to be Indian? I like found a really good friend. We read the Bhagavad Gita together. And like now, like I've got kids who are a quarter Indian. And so we're always, like I'm making sure we celebrate Diwali and we're doing things that are important because I want them to have like they have three different, right? So they're like a quarter white, a quarter Indian, and then half black. And so it's like I want to make sure that they're empowered to live in all pieces of their culture. I totally forgot your question.
I was just saying, like, how does no, that was good, but I was just asking, how does your identity shape the way that you approach your work? So, based off of like your perspective, how do you lead in your work?
Mm. So I think that it's interesting because like when I was back when I was working at the school I used to work at, I would lead a lot of DEI training. And when I think that and I don't know if it's like just because of my identity or like the like my biracial pieces, but I do think like it's easier to see sort of like um white supremacy or like the entitlement factor. And so it's like once you sort of educate yourself to see it, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that you can sort of help translate pieces, right? And so like again, I don't want to like breach the trust that we built in our pilot, but essentially like one of the factors or like one of the themes that came up is that like like in one of my groups we were talking about how direct we can be, right? And so being direct and having direct conversations without sugarcoating things is not always going to fly in the South.
Mhm.
And you can come off in a different way. And like I also am a very direct person. And so that all and I sometimes will speak my mind and that often does not sometimes it serves me, but a lot of times it doesn't. And so I think it's just something to consider.
Yeah, wow. This is really good to hear your experience because I will never know your experience unless you share your experience, you talk about it. And like you said, we have conversation. I think that's so important. Because I mean, yeah, you just never know. Like I don't know how it feels to be half Indian, and so it's great to hear how you have navigated through life and how you have, you know, came into your identity and how you're trying to help other people because that is important, right? All of us is important, not just the way that we may present. And sometimes, and that's kind of how society is, right? Like a lot of people, I don't want to say like I just don't want to say a lot of people, but you see it a lot of times where we always are just judging based off of the first impression or first, like that's the thing, your first impression is everything because people will judge you based off of that. And so, like sticking like having that type of mindset, you don't truly get to know people. You just, okay, this person is this way because they look that way, right?
Mm-hmm,
So your
mm-hmm.
work is really like digging deeper and really like unpeeling those layers back so you can really like get in touch with the real you and people can see you for who you are.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That is so beautiful. Wow, I really love that. So I would love for you to talk about maybe like what's a challenge that you faced on your journey that has taught you something valuable so far?
Mm. So it's interesting. I think like one, right, is like the pivot that I had to encounter, which is like um going from training people in mediation to now considering nonviolent communication and trying to learn that. I think the other piece is like my husband is the very best man in the world, period. And
Oh.
it's interesting because when I first told him about my idea, he was like, he like later on referred to it, oh, like that thing you're doing for white people. And I'm like, no, like that's the whole point of this. Is
Right,
like it's
right.
not just for white people or it's not just for, like and I think like um as someone who is only white and only half Indian or only half white, half Indian, like my biracial journey is so different than like someone who has to like half black, half Korean, or whatever the makeup is, and like how they also present. And so I think like that was like a lot of the purpose behind the pilot of like, okay, this is what I think based on my own experience, but does that play out in other people's? And like what I've found, and granted, it's like a small group, but the otherness of not being able to fit into sort of like either one culture or the other is there, right? Like the one team. And for me, it's interesting because it's like if I go, like in college, I went to the Diwali festival, and people are like, "Oh, like what are you up?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm half Indian." And then like you could see them embrace you, like you could feel the change, versus like, "Oh, I'm just here to observe your culture," versus like, "No, this is also part of mine." I don't know. That probably doesn't answer your question either, but
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying about how it's I guess it's just challenging just to be yourself, right? That's kind of what it feels like when we're trying to how like navigating society is challenging. It's in general, period. Like so, wow, that's really good work that you're doing. I'm very like I'm so intrigued because it makes me want to know a little bit more about other people's experiences when it comes to like how they navigate as someone like you said who has maybe they're half black, half Indian, half this, half like that's a lot of different cultures and perspectives to have. And so it's really great that you're bringing a voice to that. I love that so much. I can't wait to see more of your work. I would love for you to just end the podcast maybe with some advice, like if who like maybe to your core audience, like your core target audience, if I'm saying that right, like what advice would you give to them?
well, if we are defining my core audience as like other biracial women, I would say one, get in touch, right? And then two, one of the things that also came out of this pilot is how healing it was to speak with other biracial women about the experience of being biracial. Because there are not, like I did a lot of field research, and there are not a lot of organizations or places where we just talk about being biracial. And I think that there's a lot of healing or just like things that you hold on to that you can let go and embrace. So that I guess find your people, and okay, I guess like my advice is like no one can define your identity except yourself. Like you are the only one who knows who you are. So one of my friends said, what other people think of you is none of your business.
I love that. We're going to end it with those wise words, right? What other people think of you is none of your business. Thank you so much, Zaia, for joining us, joining me on Daily Conversations. You all, if anyone wants to support you, how can they do that?
Reach out. Email is zaiatombre@gmail.com. ZAIATHOMBRE@gmail.com.
There you have it, you all. And do not forget to like and subscribe. And I will see you on the next episode. Peace.